God gave you that emotion, so I don't think it's a negative emotion. I think that we mess it up when we use it in the way that we want to, or we take things too far. We try to make, we always take things too far.
Welcome to the Savage Servant Podcast. My name is Nick.
My name is Jason. Today we're going to be going over anger a little bit more. This week we've been going over anger. We went over some of the ways that it's affected us, some of the ways that we deal with it. We had an interview with Jay. He went through some of the anger issues that he's had. Today we're going to go over anger in the biblical context, some of the things that the Bible says about it, some of the things that we can pull from that, and kind of finish this week out. It's definitely a topic that we'll have to touch on more in the future, but just some of the basics, getting an intro into it. Anger in the Bible is a huge topic, and I didn't realize how much it was until I started to look into it, and I came across the number that the Bible talks about anger over 200 times.
No kidding.
One of the only things that the Bible talks more about or discusses more times is money. And our, like, the way that we use our money and things like that, right? So it just shows us the things that are the biggest hang-ups for people that keep them out of doing things God's way.
No, I can see that.
Yeah, absolutely. So over 200 times, one of the biggest things that stood out to me was the Bible compares anger to an all-consuming fire. And then in Deuteronomy 32:22, and the way that I was thinking about that was that fire can be used for good and for bad.
Oh, yeah. I was told that in counseling.
Were you?
Yeah.
So
Fire can keep you warm at night, but it also burn down your house.
That's fair. Well, so for me, I thought it was interesting because anger is normally thought of as such an angry thing, such a negative thing. That I didn't stop to think about when we were talking about it last time, that we can use it as a positive thing too. Like, why are you angry about this? Like, it's kind of a marker, or like a warning light almost. I've heard about it in the context of if a warning light came on, would you think that that you needed to get gas? Like, would you be upset that warning light came on, or would you just address it? So it's not a negative or a positive. It's something that you just need to know. This is telling me this.
Yeah.
So I'm angry. Why am I angry? What do I need to do to address that? Like, am I in a bad situation? I'm angry about it. Am I doing something wrong and I'm angry about it? That's the fire thing that really spoke to me.
Yeah, it has very few positive attributes, like going to the gym.
So using it for fuel as you're going to the
gym. In the gym, you get, and that's where I kind of I use it up. Like, I don't know if I mentally save it throughout my day or whatever the case may be, but
you save the anger.
Like, I'm just able to store like a memory or thought or something that way have like frustrated me throughout my day, or something that's ongoing in my life that I'm upset about, and I can't really do much about it maybe in the moment. And so in that moment, I'm going to take that frustration and I'm just going to say, I'm going to lift this weight this many times, and that's all there is to it. Like, I'm just not going to leave, I'm just going to leave it all here. And that works. I mean, it works pretty well. But as long as you leave it there. I mean, sometimes you use too much of it and then you leave the gym angry. But those have been few and far between, because you're just so tired and your endorphins are going and you just feel better. But yeah, that's one spot. Or like as a motivator. Like, let's be honest. I mean, how many times have you used anger as a motivation to not like do something destructive, but to be like, okay.
Being angry about where I have been in life has been a big thing for me.
Yeah.
Being pissed off that I couldn't pay for something. Being pissed off that like I'm stuck in this situation and I don't feel like I'm moving forward. That's been something that when I've gotten angry enough has been a trigger for change a few times in my life. And so that's definitely been a positive attribute for anger.
Yeah, those are about the only places I could see that it's a positive thing, unless you're...
protection.
That's what I was going to get to next.
Yeah.
Protecting yourself or others. Then, I mean, that's where it's ultimately kind of supposed to be used. And at that point, it's just like, let it out. Let that monster out. Let him roam. But then you hear so many people be like, oh, what if you do something to someone else? And, they sue you, or you end up hurting them really badly, or this, that, and the other. It's like, okay, that's something to think about. You're right. In that moment, is by me doing this, am I putting my family more at harm? Is it worth getting into an argument or a fight over? But there are some situations that are unavoidable, where if physical contact has already been made, then you have to defend yourself, and you have to have the means to do so. Now, in no way am I saying by that, like, oh, I'm some amazing fighter, I'm going to take on the world, because I'm not. I did some boxing, but growing up, I got in a lot of fights because I was picked on, and I got stomped on quite a few times, and it sucks, and it hurts, and you should know how to defend yourself, and, in some cases, run. Because no one's trying to get shot or stabbed, but those are the things you got to think about. Like, even at our age, having a family and whatnot. Like, I'm not saying I'm going to jump out in the middle of a street fight and pretend that I'm John Wick and beat the crap out of everybody. But I'm like, if you're physically trying to hurt me or somebody I care about or love, my daughter,
well, and we're not talking about whether you can actually do it or not.
But you should be able to.
You should, but we're talking about that's one of the positive attribute or positive sides of it, right? It can be a fuel for you to take on that role or responsibility. One of the verses that we had pulled out in Ephesians 4:26-27, part of it is be angry but do not sin, and I think that's part of the taking that into account, like the negative pieces to it. There's righteous anger, and then there's taking anger to a point where you're being vindictive or you're being vengeful. You're not actually doing what it's like. God gave you that emotion, so I don't think it's a negative emotion. I think that we mess it up when we use it in the way that we want to, or we take things too far. We try to make. We always take things too far as people, right?
Yeah,
and so
hardwired.
It potentially can be a good thing. It can be a trigger to make change. It can be a trigger to protect. It can be a trigger to all those things. We just have to make sure that we use it correctly, and that's the hardest part for sure.
Yeah.
But do not sin potentially could be you are protecting your family. You're angry that they're in this situation because of someone else, and you have to stop at a certain point. My family's protected now. It's time for me to pull back.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting dynamic, because then you have to go from angry, using that anger, to now controlled. And that, as a man, that's one of the biggest things we face. Yeah.
It's controlling that, like I listened to Jordan Peterson talk about it, like every man should be a monster inside. And there's moments where it's okay to let him out, like let him out at the gym. And you're debating on whether to let him out in that moment, but sometimes you're not given a choice to defend yourself, and that something's already happening.
Not letting him out, I think, is easier than letting him out and then pulling him back in, though.
Oh, without a doubt. Have you ever tried to chase a dog that's been inside the house all day around your backyard to get him to come in? You're going to be out there for hours.
Yeah. So that is the positive side of it.
Yeah.
We have one of the other verses we pulled out was James 1:19-20. In that the more well-known piece of it is be slow to anger.
Yeah.
And so to me that talks about not allowing your emotions to build up so quickly and not process everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Being able to process things, really take the time to understand what's going on, because if you're fast to anger and you allow things to just immediately trigger you, you're not actually processing everything, understanding where other people are coming from, looking at the situation as a whole. That quick to anger is a way that actually takes apart your ability to really understand everything and being able to use any of that information in a productive way.
No, it becomes reflex, it becomes reactionary.
Yeah.
And in that, nothing productive is going to come of it in that moment.
I think that's all the work I've done with anger, is to try to just slow down the process and give myself that time to take a breath.
Yeah.
And so
there's been many a breath taken. Trust me. I feel you. That's tough. It's such a, and everybody deals with it. It's such a difficult thing that everybody exhibits and feels every single day, either to a very small extent to being like just ragefully mad. And like you said, controlling is the biggest part. But the biggest part is, again, your accountability, your own thoughts, your own feelings. Like, there's so many things that you have to learn to deflect in your own mind that used to be like triggering to you that now can't even phase you. Like, I don't even care about that. And there's so many things that now I don't pay not that I don't pay attention to, but like I don't care about. They don't trigger me. I'm just like, whatever, don't care. Like, it's just, it takes so much energy to be mad. Like, it's so exhausting, and you don't realize that until you get to a point where it's like, this is what it's like not to be mad all the time. Or to have something weighing on my back, or to be beating myself up my own thoughts. It's like, it's a lot. One of the next passages that we have is Colossians 3:8. But now you must also rid yourselves of all such things as these anger, rage, malice, slander, and filthy language from your lips. So that last one's mainly towards you because you have a foul mouth.
I don't know what you're talking about. I think it's interesting that it puts it all together. That anger, rage, malice, slander, and filthy language.
It's almost like they're talking right to us.
Yeah, I think this was a letter to me.
Yeah, that's a text that got lost.
Yeah. No, so the filthy language is interesting because anger and rage has always led to worse language from me, which is funny. And even my family has said the way that I speak sometimes, even when I'm not angry, is like, it sounds angry because
your tone.
I possibly, but the point that I was going towards was when I am not aware and I curse and I drop F-bombs in between things.
Almost like it's the word the.
Yeah. Or and.
Yeah.
Although. Whatever. So it's a bad habit. It's definitely a bad habit that I've created over my life in EMS and warehouses and around.
Just being a guy.
And so
think about it.
No, 100%. And so but they call it they say it sounds angry. Yeah. And so that's an interesting way to pull out of that too, is that is lumped together with all that. So if I really want to keep things in control, I need to keep that language under control too, because it potentially could lead to less control in those other things.
It's true. And that's a really hard one. Like, I'm pretty good at taming my tongue now, but I never used to be. Like you said, F-bombs, everything you could think of.
What's interesting though is I have a hard time in a lot of situations, but you put me in front of my pastor, all of a sudden I can't. I'm very aware of what I'm saying.
Oh, without a doubt.
But it's just funny to me because it's like, okay, so in certain contexts, I have the self-control. It really is just about being intentional about it and getting that mindset. But it definitely, it's funny that you put me in front of somebody that I'm worried about what they think. All of a sudden, I'm better at it, but then you come back to it and you're like, God hears you all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm screwed there.
Yeah. I mean, but he knows we're flawed.
Yeah.
We're not, perfection is a road, not a goal. It's not something you're ever going to attain, but
when it says rid yourself of such things, I like that it doesn't put it in the context of you shouldn't have these things. It almost puts it in the context of these are natural. These are things that are gonna come to you, but you need to do the work to get rid of them.
Yeah, don't express them. Don't give into them.
And to me, it's less not expressing it. It's putting it, like doing something productive about it and getting rid of it. Because to me, getting rid of something, like to get rid of the trash, I have to grab it, take it outside, put it in the dumpster, right? I'm doing the physical action, the positive thing, something productive to move it out of my life, right? Like that's what I think of anger, especially when I look at some of the biblical passages for it, is it's something that's going to be there, and you just can't let it build up. You need to do the positive things to get it and move it out of your life, and do that in a way that is not potentially more damaging.
For me, I think I just raised my internal threshold as to what really makes me angry, where it used to be way down here. So, getting rid of it for me just meant like, well, you can't even touch me now, because you'd have to say and do something that got to me so bad or was so threatening to me in a way that I felt I had to react to it, that now it's like, I don't even care.
And that comes out of being more grounded with God, and being more grounded in who you are, because you have more peace, and it puts the level at which things can move you and shake you at another height, because you have more solid foundation.
Yeah. Ephesians. You know what he said, and we're leaving that in here because I mess these up all the time.
The other one was Colossians.
That one too, Colossus.
Colossians.
I don't know the X-Men was in the Bible. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you, along with all malice. So, pretty much saying the same thing.
Yeah, let it be put away from you. So distance yourself, right? The verbs in these, I think, are the biggest keys, right? Like, rid yourself, put it away from you.
Yeah.
But none of it says, nowhere in the Bible does it say, don't have it. Like, it's not okay to have it, right? It always, the verbiage is always, what do I do now that it's here? Like, getting rid of it, put yourself away from it. Figure out a way to distance yourself from your anger and that temperament, or find a way to push it away from you, that emotion, distance yourself from that emotion, and potentially the actions that come from it. But the action is to somehow move away from it. So we're going to have it. It's going to be around us. How do you put the distance between you and that? For me, it's doing the things you said, like lifting, doing manual labor, like things like that are a huge part of me putting distance in between it, especially in arguments like we talked about previously, like getting myself to do something busy where I'm not thinking about it.
No, it's true. And it's just so encapsulating, like just anger itself affects every part of your life, from the things you say to the things you do, and knowing that it exists and not trying to like rid yourself of something that's going to be innately there anyways. Like they say, the problem is the problem is how you view the problem. So problems are going to pop up, things are going to happen, anger is going to pop up, you're going to get upset at something, but it's about how you deal with it, how you diffuse, how you deflect it, how you relay it to somebody that maybe upsets you in some way. But all those things can be productive, and we should always be very accountable with what we say, impeccable with our words, like we talked about in that book, 4 Agreements.
That's next week.
You're going to hear about that. We read a book together.
No, we didn't.
So
finally, I think I just want to bring up that the thing that has helped me the most with this is being able to pray and release that anger to God, to those, like with those people that I don't have a relationship, where I'm trying to mend that relationship. When people do wrong to me or to my family, and my initial reaction is I want to get back at them, or to do harm back to them, being able to remember that it's God's anger to have, not mine, and it's God telling me, it's an emotion that God's given me to understand the relationship with me and that person, right? Like the interaction that we had, but being able to pray and just knowing that we have a just God, and it may not feel like things are gonna come to a head at that moment, but if I can let it go to Him, something eventually will be made right. Whether that is something that will make me feel better about it or not, doesn't matter. That God, if I'm able to control myself, I'll be okay. My family will be okay.
Yeah.
And so, if it's not something that's directly threatening me or my family, give it to God. And sometimes it's fun to imagine what He may do with it. But as long as I release it, we release it.
Yeah, no, I can't say I spent much time thinking about what He would do with it, but there have been often times that I have prayed before going into a situation that I know may go badly.
Yeah.
And it's helped in the end. I mean, it's helped me let go of it.
Kind of recenter before.
Yeah, and that way I don't go in defensive or looking to be angry or whatever the emotion going on is going to cause me to get upset in any way. And just kind of be, more productive in the conversation, lead to a good end result.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Till next time.
Be a savage.
Be a servant.